Our coverage of former President Donald Trump speaking currently at the South Carolina State House. Joining me now is political strategist Joel Sawyer. Joel, let's jump right into it. The highlight thus far from former President Trump's speech is that he has announced Governor Henry McMaster will be leading his campaign team here in South Carolina. What can we look for when it comes to even more support from state GOP leaders for President Trump's campaign in 2024?
I think it'll be very interesting because, you know, you have McMaster already on board, you have Graham on board, a couple of congressmen. You know, it's interesting, if you look at who is there, it's also equally interesting, or perhaps more interesting, even look and see who is not there, right? And so because we have former Governor Nikki Haley talking about potentially a presidential run, we have current Senator Tim Scott talking about a presidential run. Obviously, you have Ron DeSantis down in Florida, who is very popular among the GOP base. And so, you know, there are certainly a lot of people out there that are kind of keeping their powder dry in terms of who they endorse to see how this race shakes out.
And to that point, Joel, I noticed that so far, Trump has not mentioned anything about the primaries and who he may be battling. All his concentration has been on the Biden administration. Do you find that odd, and if so, why?
I don't yet, because no one else has announced, first of all, and I think what Trump is going to do, what worked pretty well for him in 2016, was to let everyone else beat up on each other and play for second place. And I think it's going to be his hope that happens again. And then once it gets whittled down to Trump and one other person, at that point, he'll probably kind of turn fire on him a little more.
And that one other person, you know, is still early on, like you said, it could most likely be for Ron DeSantis. How rough could that get in the primaries if he has to go against someone who once supported him?
I think incredibly if it just gets down to those two. You know, but there you have a long time between now and then, and you know, is there going to kind of be a circular firing squad, so to speak, among everyone else besides Trump to kind of be that final person who takes him on at the end? The problem that Republicans had last time is by the time they determined on who the number two was, and it was Ted Cruz last time, it was too late at that point. You know, Trump already more or less had it knocked in before that second place person was kind of decided.
And let's talk about Trump's speech being at the state capitol. Invite only. You know, not a large crowd. That doesn't really seem to be on brand for him, because he seems to really thrive off the energy of large crowds. And our State House reporter is saying that about 300 people are inside right now, but of course, invite only.
Sure, and and without going down a rabbit hole of how campaigns are financed, because I don't want to bore everyone out there, but so once you actually declare for president, the way that you can raise money, who you can raise it from, and how it is spent is very, very different than when you're an unannounced candidate and you're paying for rallies out of PAC money, which is much easier to raise and spend, fewer restrictions. So in terms of renting out stadiums, paying for security, having those large extravagant venues, those are much more expensive to an announced presidential candidate than someone who may kind of sort of run for president later on down the road. So I expect you will probably, just for financial reasons, continue to see a little bit smaller gatherings like this, but probably still some big rallies on the horizon as well.
Joel, we're wrapping up now, but final thought on what we've seen so far coming from President Trump and his first, stop in South Carolina as he's trying to win the White House next year.
I think it's in terms of the content of his speech, what we expected from him. There's a long way to go in this race, but I think that there is, despite the number of people there is very strong and broad support for him across South Carolina. So a lot of other people are going to have to make their case, and they do have time to do so.
All right, Joel Sawyer, thank you so much for joining us and giving us that insight from your standpoint. We know that you always do a great job breaking it all down for us.